do hope there are going to be some trains if Avanti West Coast are going to put on any today. That would be nice, otherwise it's a long way to go on a horse, especially if you can't yet ride. Firstly, let me say what a delight it is to be here, and I'm really grateful to Bradley for his kind invitation. And I just want to say at the beginning of conference, take this opportunity to say that I think the Prayer Book Society over the past few years has really turned a corner in a sort of evangelical, I don't mean that in a sort of churchmanship way, but in a proselytising, in an advancing way, in a welcoming way. I remember I used to get literature from the Prayer Book Society when I was an ordinand 14 years ago, which used to sort of rejoice in having services in the original spelling. And I remember thinking, what is this absurd society? And now it's great, doing great things.
It's still in the original spelling.
But still in the original spelling, there we are. So we're at Liverpool Hope University, and I'm sure, like you, despite the news, I'm feeling hopeful about the Prayer Book Society and all it's doing, and its 50th year anniversary. So I've already been introduced, but just to say a little bit more, Tom Sander, ordained in 2011. I served for 9.5 years in the rural parishes of St Albans Diocese, was briefly rural dean of Wheatamstead, before moving into London to take up the post of rector of St Giles in the Fields, which is not St Martin's in the Fields. I had a hilarious telephone call the other day from an irate woman who had turned up at St Giles in the Fields and was wondering where the Vivaldi concert was. And I said, well, I think you've got the wrong in the Fields. And she said, well, I wish you'd been clear on your poster. Of course it was my fault. Anyway, we are different to St Martin's in the Fields for many reasons, but principally because at St Giles in the Fields we use the Book of Common Prayer. I am also, as you can see on the billing, the chaplain to the Royal Army Chaplains Department, serving as Padre to the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment in Knightsbridge, affectionately called by my father and many others in the military as the Donkey Wallopers. People often ask how I manage both jobs, and I say it's a bit like having two children, not that I have them either, but usually when one's behaving well, the other one's behaving badly. The trick is, of course, never to let on which one is which. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you for the next few minutes about my time in the army as a padre, and the overlaps I encounter with the Book of Common Prayer as I experience them in the context of parochial life and military service. I've taken the red pen to this speech to slash out some bits because, as I say, I have got a train to catch. So I'll cut out the bit on army history, other than to say that the chaplains department was started in the late 1700s and really came into its own during the tragedy of the First World War, when we had great chaplains who became synonymous with bringing comfort and care and compassion to those caught up in the true horror and bloodiness of battle. And in recognition to the chaplain's work, since 1914, King George V conferred the prefix Royal on the Army Chaplains Department, and it is called this to this day. Perhaps the most famous of its number was someone I'm sure you may have heard of, the Reverend G.A. Stoddart Kennedy, otherwise known as Woodbine Willie, who served in the trenches. He was known for his no-nonsense talks, his love of the serving soldier, his willingness to get stuck in, and as his name suggests, his generosity in handing out woodbines. After the war, he worked tirelessly to advocate a middle way in politics, which centred on his personal belief that Christians of whatever colour or persuasion should fight together on common ground against sin, the world, and the devil. It was here in Liverpool in 1929 that Woodbine Willie succumbed to pneumonia and passed away. And after his death, because of his popularity, there was an immense amount of outpouring and grief from the general public. And a petition was taken up that he would be buried in Westminster Abbey. But the Dean refused burial for Kennedy in Westminster Abbey on the grounds that he thought he had been a socialist. The Dean also is the same person who refused to allow broadcasts to come from Westminster Abbey because they might be overheard by men in pubs wearing caps. Every time I think sometimes the Church of England is a ridiculous place, I remember it has been there before. Anyway, he was buried in Worcester, and tens of thousands of people attended his funeral, some of whom threw packets of woodbines into his grave. Of course, the Army Chaplains Department has moved on. Second World War, we now have the Airborne Forces and chaplains there. Chaplains go wherever their soldiers do, and we've been in recent times, of course, to the Falklands, to Iraq, Sierra Leone, former Yugoslavia, Afghanistan, and many of my colleagues who continue to serve today display an impressive array of medals and have won them admirably. To this day, every unit in every regiment in the British Army and Navy and Air Force has a chaplain assigned to them. As in any parish, the chaplain is there to provide pastoral care to those serving as soldiers, as non-commissioned officers, the ones who do the shouting, and commissioned officers, as well as all regimental staff and veterans. As a padre, you are to be the spiritual heart of any mass of serving personnel, a moral guide, an upholder and proponent of the values and standards of the British Army, a teacher, and one who by invitation prays with and for those in need, someone who boosts morale when it's needed, and of course a great dispenser of sweets, and until fairly recently, cigarettes, which you used to be able to get as part of your army ration. Alas, not anymore. Although, after the recent picture of the new Health Secretary, that policy could be soon to change. The important thing to say is that the Padre has an unbelievably unique and privileged role, unlike any other role in the regiment. We are not part of the welfare team, although obviously welfare is our business. And we are in many ways outside the unit's chain of command. Although in the Army, not in the Navy, chaplains are given a rank, in my case captain. But the reality is, however, that we adopt the rank of the person we are talking to. In my case, from the newest of troopers, often aged 17, to the honorary colonel, again in our case Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, although I still call her mum, of course, when I see her. As for us, it's always Padre and never Sir. Humility is important in this ministry, as well as reality. We are not there to actively proselytise. And in what some might describe, and I'm not going to enter into that discussion, a post-Christian nation, that would not be appropriate in the army. We've always got the National Secular Society breathing down our necks, but there we are. There we are. We are there, in an incarnational sense, to come alongside those who are serving, to lean in to what they are doing, to be competent, to be professional in our operation, and to be a help, not a hindrance. That is our mission. All of this comes with a delicious frankness. If you walk into a room, as I will later on today, and the soldiers are busy when you arrive, and you come at the wrong time, you will be told politely, if you're lucky, but in language that might be considered coarse, to go away and come back later. You have to roll with it. They have a job to do. Yours is to muck in, not to get in the way, to lead by example, to encourage, to nurture, and above all, to point towards the inestimable hope. That is the thing we carry as our weapon. The life of the army is one of frankness and getting things done. And that is why I like it. People do not hold back. They say what they think and why they think it. If you are being a prat, you will be told so in language stronger than that. If you are not working hard enough, you will be told that. There are times, there are times in parish ministry when I wish that I could have told people in that context similar things. I've changed the names for protection purposes, but if you'll allow me. Mrs. Jones, those flowers would have looked better if they'd have been thrown onto a compost heap. Stop arguing with Mrs. Miggins and get a life, or I'll bang your heads together. It doesn't matter who's doing the pedestal under the pulpit. I remember once stepping in to take a funeral for a neighbouring parish priest, because here we are. The lazy Jack priest had allegedly an unavoidable family commitment. I went past in the hearse and she was sitting having coffee outside a cafe, clearly with a friend. I finished the funeral and went back. She was having lunch. How much time, sometimes, I think, is wasted around an issue when we tiptoe. Archdeacons would be much more effective if they were more like the regimental sergeant major, calling out the backsliders, getting things done. I think the same of our bishops. If they stopped being so weak and actually behaved like a good commanding officer and took control rather than hiding behind offices and offices of similarly woolly-headed, stipend-wasting sycophants who spend all day coming up with ridiculous missional initiatives with stupid taglines, the sort that belong to a high street bank, then we might actually deliver a little support to the clergy, inject a little life into the parish, and a bit of Christianity into the world. Might even inspire people to convert, you never know. Anyway, that's something I've been wanting to say for a long time, so thank you. They're bored of hearing it at St Giles on the Fields. We have, of course, lost our greatest evangelist, who we pray for. All those who serve in the army are, of course, there to fight those deemed to be enemies of the king. We are there to operate in a way as to lawfully apply, when required, lethal force to secure a victory. To be clear, the army there is there to protect and to serve, and will do so by the ultimate lawful means. This, of course, raises millions of moral questions, which I'm not going to enter into here, but to return to my point about how the army is and what it is like. It is frank, it is no nonsense. It's about getting it done, leaning in, working hard, uniting as a team. You can dislike each other in the army, but if you jack on your mate, if you are jack as a soldier, if you don't pull your weight, then you're out. It's about the main effort. And apart from philosophical and reasons why I would want to serve in His Majesty's Armed Forces, there are three things that I want to pick from it and then link to the prayer book. 1, the army. It has a mission and a main effort. 2, it's about being ready for battle and fighting fit. 3, it takes appearance seriously. It is a smart outfit. The army is about the preservation of our temporal lives, and to do that it will operate to the ultimate ends sacrificially. The church militant here in earth is about the salvation of our lives by the supreme sacrifice of one who went before us, Jesus Christ, who yielded up his life, a ransom for many. And this, oddly, friends, is where the Book of Common Prayer comes into the picture. And I want to say two things about it. 1, why it works, and why I think it is a source of growth and mission for the modern Church of England. And 2, the example of how and why it works in the army. I'll start with the latter, how and why it works in the army. Do you mind if I just have a little indulge in a small swear word? A trooper can sniff out bullshit a mile off. He or she knows if you are talking sense or talking nonsense. The same can be said of the cook as the padre. What you serve up is either going to go on sustaining and be life-giving to a person, or it is not. It's not actually a question of taste, but a question of substance. Is this going to keep me going? The food in the army is not to everyone's taste. The prayer book is not to everyone's taste. But it is sustaining stuff. It is the stuff of life. And when we need it, we need it. The prayer book gives the faith to us straight. It is no nonsense stuff. The famous quote, "There's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole," is as true now as ever. Right now, across the nation, people will be looking for support, comfort, and direction from the church. We in the church are the ones who offer not just a tonic, but we believe by faith that we offer the tonic, the answer, the way, the truth, and the life. I have young soldiers who will come to me in my office who have, not in their words but in mine, left undone those things they ought to have done. And I definitely have troopers in my office who have done those things that they ought not to have done. I don't know if you years ago, it was about 20 years ago, watched a program called Bad Lads Army. I had a padre in there, and the relationship between the soldiers and the padre was very moving. Most of them had never been to church, most of them had never come to church, but they were forced to go to church, and the experience left them changed. Crying, weeping, coming to God. Liturgy. Liturgy is important in our prayer book. Liturgy is liturgy. It is the petrol in the car, but it is not the destination. I've said this so often to people. Liturgy is liturgy. It is the petrol, the fuel in the car, but it is not the destination. It's not the end product. It's not where we stop. It's how we get to where we're going. It's how we move from sin to grace. Shaking hands of soldiers after services, and so many of them will say, "Oh, Padre, I feel better after that." Of course you do. You've been moved by grace closer to God, closer to home, closer to the person God is calling you to be. Out on Civvy Street, quite often I'm asked when I'm walking around like this, especially in Soho, "Are you real?" I normally say, "Well, pinch me and find out." But that's the thing. People want reality. They want truth. And the Book of Common Prayer takes us there with no nonsense. The journey is clear, from kneeling in penitence to proclaiming the Gloria. In the army, there will be no time for sitting around a tea light and talking about our feelings. It's a no from me. I feel in many ways the same about my experience and use of the BCP's presentation of faith as I do about our operations within the army. There are great thematic crossovers, in my mind at least. Obviously the ends to which we go will differ, as does the message, but it's the mode of operation, the way of being, the standard expected of the group and the individual that inspires and speaks to me. Which brings me to my first point. Why it works. Why I think it's a source of growth and mission in the modern Church of England. And the first thing I want to say is that there is going to be no one answer to growing the church. There is no, I'm sorry to tell you, there is no one unique, somehow still elusive, hidden key to growing the church. It's always been mission. It always will be mission. And the Book of Common Prayer is a great tool, one of many great tools for that mission. I may think it's the greatest, but I will acknowledge that there are others. And here is why. The church and her mission, as it is described in the Book of Common Prayer, is quite clear and purposeful. There is no reimagining church here. It's all there. Like in the army, in the Book of Common Prayer, it has a main effort and a main mission. It's about being ready and effective and fighting fit for battle. And it takes appearance and posture seriously. It's smart. The BCP has a mission and a main effort. In the army, that is what you call the thing you're doing. Each operation and exercise will have its main effort, and of course that will vary according to the aims. They could be small, improving a skill, or large, the defeat and capture of an imagined or real enemy. The prayer book has at its heart a mission and a main effort, and that is to bring all people safe into the ark of Christ's church, to unite them under the banner of Christ, to give in the manner in which we have received, to read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest the holy word of God, and to do so by prayer and participation in the sacraments. That is our main effort. Worship, true and faithful, to rend our heart and not our garments to God. I heard someone give a speech once about mission. And he said that if in the Church of England every parish grew by 5 people over 5 years, which for the mathematicians who are not amongst us, that's 1 person a year. If every parish in England did that, got 1 person a year, we would not only halt decline in the Church of England, but reverse it. Simple as that. That's all it would take. I don't know why we're not doing it. I don't know where we don't get it. That should be our main effort, and the prayer book will resource that for us. Secondly, it's about being ready for battle and fighting fit. That's the point of the army. To be ready for action. All of the traditions, all of the ranks, all of the order is all there to help us to be ready for battle. Fitness is key, both physical and mental. The prayer book has at its heart those words of confession which suggest there is no health in us, and there isn't. I agree with the gentleman about good. That is our weak and sinful nature. When I was at theological college, there was great talk about brokenness. People were not sinful, but they were broken, so broken. No, it's sin. Simple as that. Sin is the enemy. Sin is what holds us back. Sin is that which makes our wounds stink and fester, as the psalmist says. And the battle we are fighting is one we are fighting manfully under the banner of Christ against sin, the world, and the devil, as it says in the baptism service. The war is real, and it is raging. The cost and wage of that war is death. And the clarion call to take up spiritual arms is real. It's all there in the Book of Common Prayer. It's our liturgical armoury. It is and it will be the resource for the Church in her mission to do battle, and to be fit for that battle we must be. And I can tell you, if I had anything to do with theological training, every ordinand would have to go to Sandhurst for at least a month. I don't know. Lastly, it takes appearance seriously. It's smart. Now, this is the inner archdeacon in me. I know that they put Rev back up on iPlayer, and I'm just loving that at the moment. But do you know what I dislike in churches is clutter? I also dislike clutter in liturgy. If I were ever an archdeacon, let me tell you, inspection would be akin to a room inspection at Sandhurst. Why do you need this cupboard full of useless Eubank Hoovers that people have donated over the years? All 7 of them. Same for liturgy. Why do you need to announce this and that and the other? The BCP, because of its ingrained, predictable posture and phrasing, releases us from reinventing the wheel every time we come to church. And it stops the meddling clergy leafing through volumes and volumes of common worship, which I'm convinced have only been produced in order to top up the pension fund. Stops them leafing through all that. These are the prayers for the people, known by the people, said by the people, to their God. The army is about the preservation of our temporal lives, and to do that, it will operate towards an ultimate end. It will have a mission, a main effort. It will be ready for battle and fighting fit. It takes appearance seriously. It's smart. The church militant here in earth is about the salvation of our lives by the supreme sacrifice of Jesus Christ, who yielded up his life a ransom for many. And the Book of Common Prayer is, I believe, our spiritual weapon, one of many. Our ration, our map, our compass, our armour. It furnishes us with everything the Church tells us we need to be faithful soldiers of Christ, to do battle against sin, the world, and the devil. It works for the mission and growth of the Church. It has a mission and a main effort. It's about being ready for battle and fighting fit. It takes appearance seriously, and it's smart. I never preach a sermon I don't need to hear myself. But what I hear and I see and I receive from the Book of Common Prayer is lean in, be ready, look sharp, fight the good fight, manfully under the banner of Christ. Here is the lesson.